Trump's second-term controversies, a critical analysis of U.S. global withdrawal and policy shifts. Welcome to the Bold African Voice, BAV, where we break down global stories with a critical African perspective. I'm Abdul Karim Kargbo, born and raised in Africa. Today we dive into Donald Trump's second-term decisions that have sent shockwaves across the globe. The U.S. withdrawal from the WHO, the Paris Climate Agreement, and other controversial moves. What do these actions mean for Africa and the world? Let's unpack it all. Donald Trump, the 47th President of the United States, has re-entered the political arena with sweeping policy changes that have sparked significant global debate. His recent decisions, outlined in executive orders signed hours after his inauguration, signal a return to his first-term ideologies but with heightened controversy. From withdrawing the U.S. from key global agreements to implementing divisive domestic policies, Trump's second term is poised to redefine the nation's role on the global stage and its internal governance framework. Global health governance and the WHO withdrawal. In a controversial move, President Trump directed the United States to withdraw from the World Health Organization, WHO, citing inappropriate political influence as the core rationale. This decision, which echoes his initial attempt in 2022, has reignited debates over the U.S.'s responsibility in global health governance. Critics argue that this withdrawal undermines international collaboration during ongoing health crises like COVID-19 and future pandemics. The U.S. contributes approximately 20% of the WHO's funding, a vital resource for the agency's operations in under-resourced regions. The withdrawal could significantly hamper health initiatives, particularly in low-income countries that rely on the WHO for vaccine distribution and disease control. The Biden administration's reversal of Trump's initial withdrawal was widely celebrated as a restoration of global trust in American leadership. However, this renewed withdrawal could deepen skepticism about the U.S.'s commitment to multilateralism. Globally, comparisons reveal that other major powers, such as the European Union and China, are doubling down on their support for the WHO. China's increasing influence within the organization raises concerns about power imbalances in global health governance, a dynamic that Trump's withdrawal may exacerbate. African nations heavily reliant on WHO funding and expertise may find themselves at the mercy of alternative powers, potentially compromising health equity and neutrality in global health initiatives. Paris Climate Agreement, a step backward? President Trump's withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement for the second time marks another pivotal moment in his administration's approach to global environmental issues. The agreement, established in 2015, aims to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Trump's justification that the accord does not align with American values echoes his 2017 rationale, where economic priorities were placed above environmental commitments. This decision starkly contrasts with the efforts of other nations to combat climate change. The European Union, for example, has implemented the European Green Deal, aiming for carbon neutrality by 2050. Meanwhile, African nations such as Kenya and Morocco are advancing renewable energy projects, even with limited resources, to address climate vulnerabilities. Trump's stance risks isolating the U.S. and undermining the global consensus necessary to tackle the climate crisis. Domestically, Trump's approach may benefit fossil fuel industries in the short term but jeopardizes long-term environmental and economic stability. States like California, which have committed to aggressive climate policies, may face challenges in compensating for federal disengagement, potentially creating a fragmented national approach to climate action. Migration policy, a shift toward isolation. President Trump's new immigration directives represent a hardline stance reminiscent of his first term, with expanded measures to curb illegal immigration and limit legal pathways. By declaring a national emergency at the southern border and halting the CHNV sponsorship initiative, Trump has significantly narrowed avenues for migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. This policy shift disrupts efforts by the Biden administration to reduce illegal border crossings through regulated channels. The termination of policies such as catch and release and protections against raids on sensitive locations like churches and schools raises human rights concerns. Comparatively, Canada's immigration policies, which emphasize humanitarian values and economic integration, provide a stark contrast. African nations like South Africa, grappling with migration challenges, also highlight the complexities of balancing national security with human dignity. This inward-looking migration policy may have broader implications for the U.S.'s global reputation. Historically, America's identity as a land of opportunity has been a cornerstone of its soft power. Restrictive migration policies risk eroding this image, particularly among African and Latin American nations that have long viewed the U.S. as a beacon of hope. Foreign assistance, America, first redux. Trump's suspension of U.S. foreign assistance for 90 days aligns with his America First philosophy, prioritizing domestic interests over global commitments. His directive to align foreign aid strictly with U.S. policy goals could destabilize international partnerships, particularly in Africa, where American aid supports critical infrastructure, health, and education projects. The African continent, already navigating reduced foreign aid due to global economic challenges, may feel the immediate impact of this policy. Nations like Ethiopia and Uganda, which rely heavily on U.S. assistance, could face setbacks in addressing poverty and health crises. China's Belt and Road Initiative may fill the vacuum left by the U.S., further solidifying Beijing's influence in Africa. Gender policies, a regressive stance. Perhaps the most polarizing decision among Trump's early executive orders is his declaration recognizing only two genders, male and female. By dismantling diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI programs, and rejecting gender fluidity, Trump has effectively rolled back years of progress in LGBTQ rights and workplace inclusivity. This decision aligns with rising global conservatism in some regions. African nations like Nigeria and Uganda have implemented stringent anti-LGBTQ laws, often citing cultural and religious values. However, it stands in stark contrast to progressive policies in Europe and parts of Latin America, where gender inclusivity is enshrined in law. The long-term implications of this policy are significant, potentially alienating younger, more progressive demographics domestically and internationally. It may also weaken the U.S.'s position as a global advocate for human rights, particularly in Africa, where U.S. influence often extends through cultural diplomacy. A forward-looking perspective. As Trump's policies begin to take shape, the world must grapple with the broader implications of America's withdrawal from multilateralism and its inward-focused governance. The Biden administration's previous efforts to restore global trust in American leadership are now being tested against Trump's renewed agenda. African nations, often on the receiving end of U.S. foreign policy decisions, must strategize to minimize disruptions while leveraging alternative alliances with the European Union, China, and other global powers. The global implications of U.S. retreat from multilateralism. The ripple effects of President Trump's policies extend beyond the immediate impacts on global agreements and partnerships. As the U.S. retreats from its role as a leader in multilateral efforts, other nations and blocs are stepping into the vacuum. This shift could redefine global power dynamics and the role of emerging economies, particularly in Africa and Asia, in shaping a multipolar world order. Health security and the rise of regional alternatives. The U.S. withdrawal from the WHO has opened the door for regional organizations to assert greater influence in global health governance. For example, the African Union's Africa CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, has already demonstrated its capacity to lead regional health responses. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Africa CDC coordinated vaccine distribution and mobilized resources, often compensating for gaps left by global institutions. China and Russia, both expanding their influence in Africa, may seize this opportunity to deepen their partnerships with regional health agencies. Through vaccine diplomacy and infrastructure investments, these nations could further entrench their positions as alternatives to Western-led initiatives. However, this shift raises questions about the transparency and accountability of such partnerships, given the geopolitical interests often tied to foreign aid. Climate change, the cost of disengagement. The decision to withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement highlights the stark divergence between the U.S. and the global community on environmental policies. While the Biden administration worked to restore U.S. credibility as a climate leader, Trump's second-term policies undermine these efforts, potentially isolating the U.S. from key climate coalitions. Emerging economies in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, which are among the most vulnerable to climate change, may face additional challenges. Countries like Kenya and South Africa, which have embraced renewable energy projects, could find it harder to secure international funding if global momentum on climate action weakens. Meanwhile, Europe's Green Deal and China's aggressive investment in green technologies position them as leaders in the transition to sustainable energy. African nations must navigate this complex landscape by forging regional agreements and partnerships that prioritize adaptation and resilience. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, could serve as a platform for promoting green investments and facilitating cross-border initiatives, reducing dependency on external actors. Migration policies and humanitarian concerns. Trump's hardline immigration policies have sparked concerns among human rights organizations, particularly regarding their implications for vulnerable populations. The suspension of refugee resettlement programs and the dismantling of pathways for legal migration could exacerbate humanitarian crises in regions like Central America, the Middle East, and Africa. For African migrants, the closure of initiatives like the CHNV program removes a vital pathway to safety and stability. Countries with high emigration rates, such as Nigeria and Eritrea, may see increased pressure on regional systems as migrants seek alternative routes. European nations, already grappling with migration challenges, could face additional strain as the U.S. withdraws its support for global migration frameworks. This inward focus also risks damaging U.S.-Africa relations, which have historically been bolstered by humanitarian aid and migration programs. African leaders may seek to strengthen ties with other global powers, including the European Union, which has implemented initiatives like the Global Compact on Migration to address shared migration challenges, re-evaluating U.S. foreign assistance, the suspension of U.S. foreign assistance programs reflects a broader shift toward unilateralism in Trump's foreign policy. While this move aligns with his America First rhetoric, it threatens to destabilize regions that rely on American aid for development and humanitarian support. In Africa, countries like Ethiopia and Mozambique, which have benefited from U.S.-funded health and education projects, face uncertain futures as these programs are reviewed. China's Belt and Road Initiative and Russia's strategic partnerships in Africa are likely to gain momentum as alternatives to U.S. aid. However, these partnerships often come with strings attached, such as debt obligations and political influence, which may undermine long-term development goals. African nations must leverage regional frameworks like the African Union and AFCFTA to reduce dependency on external aid. By prioritizing self-reliance and regional integration, the continent can mitigate the risks associated with shifts in U.S. foreign policy. Gender policies and social backlash. Trump's executive order, recognizing only two genders, has drawn significant criticism from civil society and international organizations. This policy not only marginalizes LGBTQ+ individuals, but also contradicts global trends toward inclusivity and human rights. European nations, Canada, and progressive Latin American countries have embraced policies that promote gender equality and protect LGBTQ+ rights, setting a stark contrast to the U.S. stance. In Africa, where cultural and religious norms often influence policy, Trump's decision may embolden conservative leaders to adopt similar measures. Countries like Uganda and Nigeria, which already enforce strict anti-LGBTQ+ laws, could view this policy as validation of their domestic agendas. However, progressive movements within Africa, such as South Africa's constitutional protections for LGBTQ rights, highlight the continent's diversity of perspectives. The U.S. as retreat from gender inclusivity may also impact its influence in global human rights forums, where it has traditionally been a leading voice. Rights groups in progressive nations are likely to push back, creating further divisions in international relations. The role of emerging powers in a changing world order. As the U.S. turns inward under Trump's leadership, emerging powers are stepping up to fill the void. China, with its expanding global infrastructure projects, and the European Union, with its emphasis on multilateralism, are positioning themselves as alternatives to U.S. leadership. African nations, caught between these competing interests, must navigate a delicate balancing act to safeguard their sovereignty and development goals. The global community must also grapple with the long-term implications of these shifts. Will the U.S.'s retreat from multilateralism accelerate the rise of a multipolar world order? How will emerging powers shape the norms and values of international cooperation? And can regional organizations like the African Union and ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations, rise to the challenge of addressing global issues in the absence of U.S. leadership? Multilateralism in flux, navigating a polarized global arena. The shifting dynamics in global leadership, precipitated by Trump's policies, signal a pivotal moment for multilateralism. With the U.S. withdrawing from key agreements and institutions, the onus now falls on regional organizations and emerging powers to redefine cooperation and uphold global norms. This transition, while challenging, offers opportunities for nations, particularly in Africa, to assert greater agency in shaping their destinies. Africa's strategic response to U.S. isolationism. African nations face a dual challenge, mitigating the immediate fallout of reduced U.S. engagement while leveraging the geopolitical vacuum to strengthen continental frameworks. The African Union, AU, and sub-regional organizations such as ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States, and SADC, Southern African Development Community, must adopt proactive strategies to ensure stability and growth. Economic integration as a counterbalance. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, a landmark initiative aimed at creating a single market for goods and services across the continent, emerges as a beacon of hope. By fostering intra-African trade and reducing dependence on external partners, the AFCFTA can insulate African economies from the volatility of shifting foreign policies. However, the success of AFCFTA hinges on robust infrastructure, streamlined customs procedures, and political will. The U.S. withdrawal from multilateral platforms underscores the urgency for African leaders to accelerate the implementation of AFCFTA's protocols. Lessons can be drawn from the European Union's single market model, which has successfully integrated diverse economies while preserving national interests. Health security through regional collaboration. The U.S. exit from the WHO amplifies the need for African health institutions to step up. The Africa CDC's exemplary leadership during the COVID-19 pandemic provides a foundation for scaling up regional health responses. By pooling resources, expertise, and data, African nations can create a resilient health ecosystem that reduces reliance on external funding. Additionally, partnerships with nations like India, which has a strong pharmaceutical industry, and China, a major player in medical equipment manufacturing, can help bridge gaps in health infrastructure. These collaborations must prioritize equitable access and avoid replicating power imbalances seen in traditional donor-recipient relationships. Climate leadership, beyond U.S. engagement. Trump's climate policies underscore a broader trend of dissonance in global climate governance. While the U.S. remains a critical player due to its economic and industrial clout, its retreat creates an opportunity for other nations to lead by example. Africa's role in climate action. African nations, despite being disproportionately affected by climate change, contribute minimally to global greenhouse gas emissions. This paradox positions Africa as a moral authority in climate negotiations. Countries like Morocco, with its ambitious renewable energy projects, and Kenya, a leader in geothermal energy, demonstrate the continent's potential to champion sustainable development. Regional initiatives, such as the African Renewable Energy Initiative, AREI, must be scaled up to attract investments and promote innovation. Collaboration with the European Union's Green Deal and China's Belt and Road Initiative could provide technical and financial support. However, African leaders must negotiate these partnerships carefully to avoid debt traps and ensure that projects align with local priorities. The geopolitical realignment, new alliances, and power shifts. Trump's policies have accelerated the fragmentation of traditional alliances, prompting nations to reevaluate their strategic partnerships. For Africa, this realignment presents both opportunities and risks. China and Russia, strategic partners or neo-colonial actors. China's expansive Belt and Road Initiative has made it a dominant player in African infrastructure development. While these projects address critical gaps, concerns about debt sustainability and political influence persist. Similarly, Russia's increasing involvement, particularly in military and energy sectors, has raised questions about the motives underlying its African engagements. African nations must adopt a pragmatic approach, leveraging these partnerships for mutual benefit while safeguarding sovereignty. Transparency and accountability in project implementation are crucial to ensuring that foreign investments contribute to sustainable development rather than perpetuating dependency. European Union, a renewed focus on partnership. The European Union, with its emphasis on multilateralism and sustainable development, offers a counterbalance to the transactional nature of US and Chinese policies. Initiatives such as the EU-Africa Strategy and the Global Gateway aim to deepen ties through trade, investment, and capacity building. African leaders must advocate for equitable partnerships that address historical imbalances. The EU's experience with regional integration provides valuable lessons for Africa as it navigates its own path toward unity and cooperation. Social policies and the global backlash Trump's rollback of diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI) programs and his stance on gender issues have sparked a global backlash. These policies, viewed as regressive by many, contrast sharply with the progressive trends in other parts of the world. The impact on Africa's social landscape in Africa, where cultural and religious norms heavily influence policy, Trump's decisions may embolden conservative leaders. However, they also present an opportunity for progressive movements to advocate for inclusivity and human rights. South Africa, with its constitutional protections for LGBTQ+ rights, serves as a model for balancing tradition and modernity. Grassroots organizations and civil society play a crucial role in advancing social justice. By fostering dialogue and challenging discriminatory practices, these groups can drive change from the ground up, countering the influence of regressive policies. The road ahead, balancing independence and collaboration. As the U.S. recalibrates its foreign and domestic policies under Trump's leadership, the global community must adapt to a new reality. For Africa, this moment demands bold leadership, innovative thinking, and strategic alliances. The continent's future hinges on its ability to balance independence with collaboration, leveraging its immense potential to shape a fairer and more equitable world order. Empowering Africa through strategic alliances and innovation. Africa stands at a critical crossroads, where the choices made today will define its role in a rapidly evolving global order. As the U.S. under Trump pivots inward, the continent has a unique opportunity to realign its strategies, assert its agency, and foster partnerships that prioritize its developmental needs. The challenge lies in ensuring that these decisions are not merely reactive but are guided by a long-term vision of self-reliance and sustainable growth. Economic diversification and technological innovation. African economies have long been characterized by a reliance on raw material exports, leaving them vulnerable to external shocks. The shifting global dynamics underscore the urgency of diversifying economic activities and investing in technology-driven sectors. AfCFTA as a catalyst for economic resilience. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, offers a framework to unlock intra-African trade and reduce dependency on traditional markets. To maximize its potential, member states must address logistical challenges, harmonize regulations, and prioritize sectors that drive value addition, such as manufacturing and technology. For example, Rwanda's burgeoning tech sector, supported by progressive policies and international partnerships, demonstrates how strategic investments in innovation can spur economic transformation. Similarly, Nigeria's fintech boom highlights the potential for technology to bridge financial inclusion gaps and drive economic growth across the continent. Leveraging digital transformation. The COVID-19 pandemic accelerated digital adoption globally, and Africa was no exception. From e-commerce platforms to mobile banking solutions, technology has become a lifeline for businesses and consumers alike. Governments must build on this momentum by investing in digital infrastructure, expanding internet access, and fostering a regulatory environment that encourages innovation. Global comparisons underscore the importance of public-private partnerships in driving digital transformation. Estonia, a pioneer in e-governance, provides a model for how digital tools can enhance public service delivery and increase transparency. African nations can adapt such practices to their unique contexts, ensuring inclusivity and scalability. Strengthening regional security and governance. Trump's decision to prioritize U.S. domestic policies over international commitments also impacts global security arrangements. For Africa, this shift necessitates a reassessment of its security architecture and governance frameworks. AU-led security initiatives. The African Union's Peace and Security Council, PSC, has been instrumental in addressing conflicts across the continent, from mediating in Ethiopia's Tigray conflict to deploying peacekeeping missions in Somalia. However, resource constraints and external interference often undermine the PSC's effectiveness. To strengthen its security framework, Africa must prioritize funding for AU-led initiatives and enhance collaboration among member states. Leveraging technology such as drones and satellite imaging can improve surveillance and intelligence sharing capabilities, enabling quicker responses to emerging threats. Combating governance challenges. Weak governance remains a significant impediment to Africa's development. Issues such as corruption, electoral manipulation, and limited judicial independence hinder progress and erode public trust. The U.S.'s retreat from global leadership provides an impetus for African nations to address these challenges internally. Countries like Botswana and Ghana, known for their robust democratic institutions, offer lessons in fostering accountability and transparency. Regional organizations must also play a more active role in holding member states accountable, ensuring adherence to democratic norms and principles. Redefining Africa's role in global climate action. As the global climate crisis intensifies, Africa's unique position as both a victim and a potential leader in climate action becomes increasingly evident. With the U.S. retreating from the Paris Climate Agreement under Trump, African nations must step up to advocate for equitable climate policies and innovative solutions. Renewable energy revolution. Africa possesses vast renewable energy potential, from solar power in the Sahara Desert to hydropower along the Congo River. Investments in these resources can not only address the continent's energy deficit, but also position Africa as a global leader in green energy production. International partnerships are crucial in this regard. Germany's Energiewende, energy transition, and China's leadership in solar panel manufacturing provide valuable lessons in scaling renewable energy projects. African governments must negotiate terms that prioritize local job creation, technology transfer, and long-term sustainability. Promoting climate adaptation. While mitigation remains a global priority, adaptation is equally critical for Africa, given its vulnerability to climate change. Projects such as the Great Green Wall, aimed at combating desertification in the Sahel, demonstrate the potential for large-scale, community-driven initiatives to build resilience. To sustain such efforts, African nations must advocate for increased climate financing at global forums. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, and other multilateral platforms provide avenues to push for equitable funding mechanisms that recognize Africa's disproportionate burden. Cultural diplomacy and soft power. Amid geopolitical realignments, Africa's rich cultural heritage offers a powerful tool for fostering global partnerships and enhancing its influence. From Nollywood's growing global audience to the Afrobeats music revolution, African art forms are capturing the world's imagination. Harnessing cultural exports. Investing in creative industries can drive economic growth and project a positive image of Africa on the global stage. For instance, Nigeria's film industry contributes significantly to its GDP, while South Africa's tourism sector leverages its cultural diversity and natural beauty to attract millions of visitors annually. Governments must create enabling environments for these industries to thrive. This includes implementing intellectual property protections, providing access to financing, and promoting cross-border collaborations. The role of diaspora engagement. The African diaspora represents a vast reservoir of talent, resources, and influence. Initiatives such as the African Union's Diaspora Division aim to strengthen connections with diaspora communities, enabling them to contribute more effectively to the continent's development. Countries like Ethiopia and Ghana have successfully engaged their diasporas through investment incentives and cultural programs. Expanding these efforts can amplify Africa's voice in global affairs while fostering a sense of shared identity and purpose. A future defined by unity and vision. As Africa navigates a world shaped by shifting power dynamics and unprecedented challenges, its leaders must adopt a forward-looking approach that prioritizes unity, resilience, and innovation. The continent's vast resources, youthful population, and cultural richness position it as a potential global powerhouse. By strengthening regional cooperation, leveraging technology, and fostering inclusive governance, Africa can turn challenges into opportunities. The U.S. inward pivot under Trump, while disruptive, underscores the need for Africa to chart its path with confidence and clarity, positioning Africa as a global leader. Opportunities and strategies. Africa's journey to self-reliance and global leadership depends on its ability to harness its resources, innovate solutions, and navigate a multipolar world with strategic foresight. The retreat of traditional powers like the U.S., under Trump's inward-looking policies, presents both challenges and opportunities for the continent. By leveraging its strengths and addressing systemic weaknesses, Africa can emerge as a key player in shaping the future of global governance. Investing in human capital for sustainable development. A continent with the world's youngest population, Africa has immense potential to drive innovation, entrepreneurship, and growth. However, unlocking this potential requires substantial investment in education, healthcare, and workforce development. Education as a cornerstone education systems in many African countries remain underfunded and misaligned with market demands. Countries like Kenya and Ghana, which have invested in free primary and secondary education, demonstrate the positive impact of prioritizing access. However, the focus must now shift to quality, with an emphasis on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, education, and technical skills training. Global examples such as Finland's highly ranked education system offer lessons in teacher training, curriculum design, and community involvement. African nations can adapt these models to local contexts, ensuring that education equips young people with the skills needed to compete in the global economy. Healthcare as a foundation for growth. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed weaknesses in healthcare infrastructure worldwide, but its impact was particularly acute in Africa. Strengthening health systems through increased funding, technological integration, and regional cooperation is essential. Rwanda's success in using digital platforms to manage healthcare delivery offers a blueprint for scaling similar innovations across the continent. International partnerships such as those with the World Bank and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation can provide technical expertise and funding. However, African nations must take the lead in defining priorities and ensuring that external support aligns with long-term goals. Tapping into Africa's natural resources responsibly. Africa is home to vast natural resources, from minerals and oil to arable land and biodiversity. These resources, if managed responsibly, can fuel economic transformation and provide a foundation for sustainable development. Rethinking resource governance. Historically, Africa's resource wealth has often been a source of conflict and exploitation rather than prosperity. Countries like Botswana, which has effectively managed its diamond wealth through transparent governance and reinvestment in social programs, highlight the potential for a different approach. African nations must prioritize reforms in resource governance, including implementing stringent anti-corruption measures, renegotiating exploitative contracts, and ensuring that resource revenues are invested in infrastructure and human capital. Advancing sustainable agriculture. With a growing global demand for food and Africa's abundant arable land, the continent has an opportunity to become a leader in sustainable agriculture. Innovations such as climate-resilient crops, precision farming, and renewable energy-powered irrigation systems can enhance productivity while minimizing environmental impact. The African Union's Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program, CAADP, provides a framework for member states to align national policies with regional goals. However, success will require increased funding, private sector involvement, and farmer empowerment through access to markets and technology. Strengthening Africa's voice in global institutions. The marginalization of African perspectives in global institutions has long been a barrier to equitable decision-making. As the U.S. steps back from multilateralism, Africa must push for greater representation and influence in international organizations. Reforming the United Nations. The United Nations, a cornerstone of global governance, has faced criticism for its failure to reflect the realities of the 21st century. Africa's call for permanent representation on the UN Security Council remains a critical demand. The continent's leaders must continue to lobby for reforms that address power imbalances and ensure that African voices shape global policies. Championing regional collaboration beyond global institutions, Africa can lead by example through its regional organizations. The African Union and its affiliated bodies, such as ECOWAS and SADC, must strengthen their capacities to address conflicts, coordinate economic policies, and promote shared goals. Successful regional collaboration can serve as a model for multilateralism in other parts of the world. Promoting digital and financial inclusion. The digital economy offers immense opportunities for Africa to leapfrog traditional development barriers. By fostering innovation, expanding access to financial services, and creating enabling regulatory environments, African nations can build resilient economies. Expanding mobile connectivity. Mobile technology has already revolutionized sectors like banking and healthcare in Africa. Countries like Kenya, with its pioneering mobile payment platform M-Pesa, illustrate the transformative potential of digital inclusion. Expanding access to affordable mobile connectivity and internet services will be key to sustaining this momentum. Building inclusive financial systems. Financial inclusion remains a challenge for many Africans, particularly women and rural communities. Innovative fintech solutions, supported by progressive regulatory frameworks, can bridge this gap. Partnerships with global financial institutions and technology companies can accelerate these efforts, provided they prioritize local needs and inclusivity. Fostering a Pan-African identity. The vision of a united Africa, championed by leaders like Kwame Nkrumah and Julius Nyerere, remains as relevant today as it was in the early days of independence. While political unity has proven elusive, cultural and economic integration can serve as a foundation for fostering a Pan-African identity. Cultural exchange and unity. Africa's cultural diversity is a strength that can be harnessed to build a shared identity. Initiatives like the Pan-African Cultural Festival and the African Union's Agenda 2063 emphasize the importance of cultural exchange in promoting unity. Youth as catalysts for change. Africa's youth are central to realizing the continent's potential. Through education, civic engagement, and entrepreneurship, young Africans can drive innovation and challenge entrenched systems of inequality and corruption. Platforms that amplify their voices, such as social media and youth-focused summits, can foster a new generation of leaders committed to a united and prosperous Africa. The path forward, transforming challenges into opportunities. Africa's ability to navigate the challenges posed by Trump's policies and broader global shifts will depend on its leaders' vision, its institutions' resilience, and its people's ingenuity. By focusing on strategic priorities, education, health, resource management, digital transformation, and regional integration, the continent can lay the groundwork for a future defined by progress and inclusivity. Advancing Africa's strategic autonomy in a multipolar world. As global power dynamics evolve and traditional alliances are tested, Africa must position itself as an autonomous actor capable of navigating the complexities of a multipolar world. The inward turn of the United States under Trump's administration, marked by a retreat from multilateralism, creates both challenges and opportunities for the continent. To capitalize on these opportunities, Africa must strengthen its strategic autonomy through enhanced political, economic, and technological resilience. Developing Africa's political resilience. The stability and effectiveness of governance systems across Africa will be crucial in addressing internal challenges and asserting the continent's role on the global stage. Enhancing democratic institutions. One of Africa's persistent challenges has been the fragility of its democratic institutions. Electoral irregularities, weak judicial systems, and executive overreach have undermined public trust in governance. However, countries like Ghana and Botswana have demonstrated that robust institutions can lead to stability and sustained development. Africa's regional bodies, particularly the African Union, AU, must take a firmer stance against undemocratic practices, such as constitutional manipulation and election rigging. Leveraging tools like the AU Charter on Democracy, Elections, and Governance, member states can hold one another accountable to shared democratic principles. Peace-building and conflict resolution. Conflicts in regions like the Sahel, Horn of Africa, and Great Lakes continue to impede progress. While international support has been essential, African-led initiatives like ECOWAS's intervention in the Gambia in 2017 demonstrate the continent's capacity to address crises independently. Expanding and adequately funding AU peacekeeping operations, along with preventive diplomacy, can reduce dependence on external actors while promoting stability. Strengthening economic resilience. The economic fallout from external shocks, including Trump's withdrawal from global agreements, underscores the need for Africa to diversify its economic base and reduce reliance on external markets. Industrialization and value addition. Africa's abundant raw materials, from minerals to agricultural produce, have long been exported with little value addition. By investing in local industries, countries can create jobs, boost exports, and retain more wealth within the continent. Initiatives such as Ethiopia's industrial parks and Rwanda's Made in Rwanda campaign serve as models for how governments can prioritize value addition. Regional supply chains. The COVID-19 pandemic highlighted vulnerabilities in global supply chains, emphasizing the importance of regional collaboration. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, can play a pivotal role in fostering regional supply chains that enhance economic resilience. For instance, collaboration between Nigeria's manufacturing sector and Côte d'Ivoire's agricultural industry can create integrated value chains benefiting both economies. Harnessing technological innovation technology remains a key enabler of Africa's development, with the potential to address challenges across sectors, including health, education, and governance. Digital governance. African governments can leverage technology to improve public service delivery, reduce corruption, and foster citizen engagement. Estonia's e-governance model, which enables citizens to access services online seamlessly, provides a template for Africa's digital transformation. By investing in digital infrastructure and training, countries can enhance efficiency while increasing transparency. Startups and innovation hubs. The rise of tech hubs across Africa, such as Kenya's Silicon Savannah and Nigeria's Yabakan Valley, highlights the continent's growing role in the global innovation ecosystem. Governments and private investors must continue to support these hubs, offering funding, mentorship, and market access to scale homegrown solutions. Expanding Africa's influence in global trade. Trump's policies, including the withdrawal from international agreements and the emphasis on protectionism, have reshaped global trade patterns. Africa must leverage this realignment to secure favorable trade terms and diversify its trading partners. Leveraging AFCFTA for global negotiations. As the world's largest free trade area by number of participating countries, AFCFTA provides Africa with significant bargaining power. By presenting a unified front in trade negotiations with the European Union, China, and the United States, African countries can secure better terms that prioritize their development goals. Expanding South-South cooperation. South-South trade and cooperation, particularly with nations in Asia and Latin America, offer a counterbalance to traditional trade relationships. Partnerships with countries like India, Brazil, and Indonesia can facilitate technology transfer, access to new markets, and collaborative research initiatives. Driving environmental leadership. Trump's rollback of climate commitments has created a leadership vacuum that Africa is uniquely positioned to fill. As a continent disproportionately affected by climate change, Africa can champion global efforts to address this crisis. Renewable energy leadership. Africa's abundant renewable energy resources, such as solar, wind, and hydro, offer a sustainable path to energy independence. Countries like Morocco and South Africa have already made significant strides in renewable energy production, providing blueprints for others to follow. Investing in regional energy grids, such as the proposed North-South Power Corridor, can ensure equitable access to clean energy while reducing costs. Africa can also explore partnerships with global funds like the Green Climate Fund to finance these projects. Advocacy for climate justice. Africa's voice is crucial in advocating for climate justice at global forums, such as the COP conferences. The continent must push for increased climate financing and demand accountability from major polluters for their historical contributions to global warming. By uniting around a common agenda, African nations can amplify their influence in shaping global climate policies. Promoting social equity and inclusion. While economic growth is essential, it must be accompanied by efforts to address inequality and ensure that development benefits all citizens. Empowering women and youth. Women and young people constitute the majority of Africa's population yet remain underrepresented in decision-making. Policies that promote gender equality, such as quotas for women in leadership, and initiatives that support youth entrepreneurship can unleash the continent's full potential. Countries like Rwanda, where women hold 61% of parliamentary seats, demonstrate how gender inclusion can drive societal progress. Expanding access to education, particularly for girls, and providing platforms for youth participation will be critical in shaping a more equitable future. Building social safety nets. To mitigate the effects of economic shocks, African governments must prioritize social protection programs. Cash transfers, subsidized healthcare, and unemployment benefits can reduce poverty and foster resilience among vulnerable populations. Partnerships with international organizations like the World Bank can provide technical and financial support for these programs. Africa's journey to global leadership. The path forward for Africa lies in its ability to build resilient institutions, embrace innovation, and foster unity among its diverse nations. As the U.S. under Trump's leadership takes a backseat in global affairs, Africa can step forward as a leader in promoting sustainable development, equity, and multilateralism. This journey requires visionary leadership, bold reforms, and a commitment to placing Africa's interests at the center of its development agenda. By seizing the moment and addressing its internal challenges, Africa can emerge not just as a participant, but as a driving force in shaping the future of the global order. Redefining Africa's global role through strategic partnerships. Africa's rising prominence in global affairs hinges on its ability to form strategic partnerships that enhance its bargaining power, promote mutual respect, and align with its developmental goals. As global powers realign their priorities, Africa must navigate these shifts with foresight, ensuring that its relationships are rooted in equality and shared benefits. Forging stronger intracontinental alliances. Unity among African nations is crucial for presenting a cohesive voice on the international stage. The African Union, AU, and its associated bodies have made strides in fostering collaboration, but deeper integration is needed to amplify Africa's influence, strengthening the African Union's capacity. The AU must transition from being a platform for dialogue to a robust policymaking and implementation body. This requires improved funding mechanisms, reduced reliance on external donors, and enhanced enforcement of its resolutions. Member states must prioritize their financial contributions to the AU, reducing the dependency that often limits the organization's autonomy. For example, initiatives like the AU Peace Fund, designed to finance peacekeeping missions, must be fully supported by African nations. This financial independence will empower the AU to take decisive actions in resolving conflicts and promoting stability. Expanding regional economic communities, RECs. Africa's 8 regional economic communities, RECs, play a vital role in fostering economic and political integration. Strengthening these blocs and harmonizing their policies with the broader goals of the AU can enhance regional cooperation. For instance, the East African Community, EAC, has made significant progress toward a common market and monetary union, serving as a model for other RECs. By aligning the goals of the RECs with the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, the continent can build a unified economic space that leverages the strengths of its diverse regions. Balancing relations with global powers. As the U.S. under Trump withdraws from multilateral frameworks, other global powers are vying for influence in Africa. Navigating these relationships requires a delicate balance to ensure Africa's sovereignty and long-term interests. China's growing influence, China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, has positioned it as a key player in Africa's infrastructure development. While Chinese investments have transformed sectors such as transportation and energy, concerns about debt sustainability and transparency persist. African governments must renegotiate unfavorable terms, prioritize projects that align with national development plans, and ensure that local workers and businesses benefit from these investments. Collaborative frameworks, such as the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, FOCAC, can be leveraged to address these concerns and promote equitable partnerships. Renewing relations with the European Union. The European Union, EU, Africa's historical trade partner, has sought to redefine its relationship with the continent through initiatives like the EU-Africa Partnership. This partnership emphasizes sustainable development, security cooperation, and economic ties. African leaders must push for fair trade agreements that address historical imbalances, such as the Economic Partnership Agreements, EPAs, which have been criticized for favoring EU interests. By advocating for policies that prioritize value addition and local job creation, Africa can ensure that its trade relations with Europe are mutually beneficial. Engaging emerging economies. Beyond traditional powers, Africa must deepen ties with emerging economies such as India, Brazil, and Turkey. These nations share similar developmental challenges and offer valuable lessons in areas like technology, agriculture, and healthcare. India's leadership in generic pharmaceuticals and Brazil's expertise in tropical agriculture can support Africa's goals of achieving self-reliance in critical sectors. South-South cooperation initiatives, such as the India-Brazil-South Africa (IBSA) Dialogue Forum, provide platforms for knowledge exchange and joint action. Innovating for inclusive growth. Innovation is a key driver of inclusive growth, enabling Africa to address its unique challenges while contributing to global solutions. From leveraging its youthful population to harnessing indigenous knowledge, Africa's innovation ecosystem holds immense potential. Accelerating the digital economy. The rapid growth of Africa's digital economy presents opportunities to bridge gaps in healthcare, education, and financial services. Investments in broadband infrastructure, digital literacy programs, and regulatory frameworks are essential to sustaining this momentum. Examples like Rwanda's integration of drones for medical deliveries and Nigeria's adoption of blockchain technology in financial services highlight the transformative power of digital innovation. Governments must continue to support these initiatives through public-private partnerships and targeted funding. Fostering green innovation. As climate change disproportionately affects Africa, innovative solutions that promote sustainability are critical. Renewable energy startups, waste management initiatives, and sustainable agriculture projects are emerging across the continent, demonstrating the potential for green innovation to drive economic growth. Programs like the African Innovation Foundation's Innovation Prize for Africa can incentivize the development of solutions that address both local challenges and global issues. Expanding access to funding and mentorship will ensure that these innovations scale effectively. Amplifying Africa's voice in global governance. To secure a seat at the table in global decision-making, Africa must proactively advocate for reforms in international institutions and ensure its participation in shaping the global agenda. Pushing for UN Security Council reform, Africa's lack of permanent representation on the UN Security Council remains a glaring gap in global governance. The continent must intensify its campaign for reform, leveraging support from emerging economies and other regions that share its vision for a more equitable system. The Eswatini Consensus, which calls for at least 2 permanent seats for Africa on the Security Council, provides a strong foundation for these efforts. African leaders must present a united front in negotiations, emphasizing the moral and practical necessity of such reforms. Leading global health initiatives. The COVID-19 pandemic has underscored the importance of health security in global governance. Africa's experience in managing pandemics such as Ebola positions it as a valuable contributor to global health discussions. By actively participating in platforms like the World Health Assembly and championing initiatives like the Africa CDC, African nations can shape policies that prioritize equity and resilience in global health systems. Looking ahead, Africa's path to global leadership. Africa's journey toward global leadership requires a strategic blend of unity, innovation, and partnership. The continent's ability to navigate the challenges of a fragmented global order will depend on the strength of its institutions, the vision of its leaders, and the engagement of its citizens. As the world adapts to shifting power dynamics, Africa has a unique opportunity to redefine its role, not as a passive participant, but as an active shaper of the future. By investing in its people, fostering inclusive growth, and championing multilateralism, Africa can transform challenges into opportunities, laying the foundation for a more just and equitable global order. Transforming Africa's challenges into strategic opportunities. Africa's potential to emerge as a global leader lies in its ability to address internal challenges with innovative solutions while leveraging external shifts to its advantage. The continent's demographic dividend, natural resources, and cultural wealth provide a solid foundation for sustainable growth. However, achieving this vision requires sustained efforts to address governance deficits, economic vulnerabilities, and social inequalities. Addressing governance deficits. Governance challenges remain a critical barrier to Africa's development. Corruption, weak institutional frameworks, and limited accountability undermine public trust and hinder progress. Strengthening governance is not only essential for domestic stability, but also for bolstering Africa's credibility on the global stage. Prioritizing anti-corruption measures. Corruption continues to siphon billions from African economies annually, depriving citizens of essential services. Countries like Rwanda and Botswana have shown that strong leadership and robust institutional mechanisms can significantly reduce corruption. Establishing independent anti-corruption agencies, promoting transparency through digital governance, and empowering civil society to hold leaders accountable are essential steps. Strengthening judicial independence. Judicial systems in many African countries are often subject to political interference, weakening the rule of law. Ensuring the independence of the judiciary is critical for upholding democratic norms and protecting human rights. Regional bodies like the African Court on Human and People's Rights must be empowered to provide oversight and address violations effectively. Tackling economic vulnerabilities. Africa's economic resilience depends on diversification, regional integration, and harnessing the potential of its vast informal sector. The global economic shifts resulting from Trump's policies and other geopolitical changes provide a window of opportunity for Africa to reposition itself. Formalizing the informal sector. The informal sector accounts for a significant portion of Africa's economic activity, yet it remains largely untaxed and unregulated. Policies that support the formalization of informal businesses, such as access to microfinance, simplified taxation systems, and training programs, can unlock untapped economic potential. For instance, Nigeria's success in integrating small-scale traders into its financial system through mobile payment platforms highlights the benefits of targeted interventions. Accelerating industrialization. Industrialization is critical for Africa's economic transformation. By investing in manufacturing and processing industries, countries can move up the value chain and reduce dependency on raw material exports. Ethiopia's Hawassa Industrial Park, focused on textiles and apparel, serves as a model for how government policy can attract investment and create jobs. Expanding such initiatives across the continent can drive inclusive economic growth. Championing climate adaptation and resilience. Africa's vulnerability to climate change necessitates a proactive approach to adaptation and resilience. The continent must position itself as a global leader in advocating for climate justice while implementing strategies to mitigate the impacts of environmental challenges. Building climate-resilient infrastructure. Floods, droughts, and other climate-related disasters threaten infrastructure and livelihoods across Africa. Investing in resilient infrastructure such as flood-resistant housing, drought-tolerant crops, and renewable energy systems is essential. Public-private partnerships can play a crucial role in mobilizing resources for such projects. Advocating for climate finance at international forums, African leaders must push for equitable climate financing mechanisms that recognize the continent's disproportionate vulnerability. This includes advocating for the fulfillment of the $100 billion annual climate finance commitment made by developed nations under the Paris Agreement. Transparent allocation and utilization of these funds will ensure they reach communities most in need, leveraging Africa's cultural and creative economy. The cultural and creative industries are powerful drivers of economic growth and social cohesion. Africa's rich heritage and vibrant arts scene provide a unique opportunity to project soft power globally. Scaling the creative economy. The global success of African music, film, and fashion underscores the potential of the creative economy. For example, Nigeria's Nollywood and the rise of Afrobeats have garnered international acclaim, creating economic opportunities and enhancing Africa's global image. Governments must invest in infrastructure such as film studios and concert venues, while providing legal protections for intellectual property to ensure sustainable growth in these industries. Promoting cultural diplomacy. Africa's cultural heritage is a valuable tool for fostering international goodwill and collaboration. Initiatives like the UNESCO-backed African World Heritage Fund and cultural exchange programs can promote understanding and solidarity. Additionally, diasporic connections can be leveraged to enhance cultural ties and attract investments. Mobilizing the African diaspora. The African diaspora represents a significant asset for the continent's development. Comprising millions of individuals with diverse skills, networks, and financial resources, the diaspora can contribute to Africa's progress in numerous ways. Encouraging diaspora investments. Remittances from the diaspora already contribute significantly to African economies, surpassing foreign aid in many cases. Governments can further incentivize investments by offering diaspora bonds, tax incentives, and streamlined processes for starting businesses. Ethiopia's diaspora bond for its Grand Renaissance Dam project illustrates the potential for leveraging diaspora resources for national development. Engaging diaspora expertise. The diaspora's expertise in areas such as technology, healthcare, and education can address skills gaps across Africa. Programs that facilitate knowledge transfer, such as Ghana's Year of Return initiative, provide platforms for diaspora professionals to contribute to national development. Seizing the moment, Africa's global leadership. As the U.S. under Trump recedes from its leadership role in global governance, Africa has a unique opportunity to fill the void. By championing inclusive development, sustainable practices, and multilateral cooperation, the continent can position itself as a beacon of progress in an increasingly fragmented world. Africa's success will depend on the ability of its leaders to implement transformative policies, engage with citizens, and forge strategic partnerships. The path forward is challenging but filled with opportunities to redefine Africa's role as a global leader. Empowering Africa through holistic development approaches. Africa's quest for global leadership necessitates an inclusive and holistic approach to development that aligns with its socio-economic, environmental, and political realities. By addressing historical inequities, fostering innovation, and building on its unique strengths, the continent can establish itself as a formidable force in global affairs. Deepening regional integration. The success of Africa's long-term vision hinges on the strength of its regional integration frameworks. While significant progress has been made, there remains room to accelerate efforts to unite the continent economically and politically. Streamlining AfCFTA implementation. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, represents the cornerstone of economic integration. However, realizing its full potential requires member states to address persistent barriers such as non-tariff trade restrictions, inadequate infrastructure, and fragmented customs systems. Harmonizing regulatory frameworks, improving transport and energy networks, and fostering cross-border collaboration can catalyze intra-African trade. For instance, the Trans-African Highway project, which aims to connect major cities across the continent, should be prioritized to facilitate trade and mobility. Political unity as a catalyst for progress. While economic integration is vital, Africa must also strengthen its political unity to address shared challenges more effectively. A unified approach to issues such as climate change, health security, and conflict resolution can enhance Africa's influence in global decision-making forums. The African Union's Agenda 2063 provides a blueprint for achieving political and economic unity. Accelerating its implementation through actionable commitments from member states will be crucial in shaping Africa's future. Prioritizing youth and women in development. The inclusion of youth and women in Africa's development agenda is not merely a moral imperative, but an economic necessity. By empowering these demographic groups, Africa can unlock unparalleled growth and innovation. Youth as drivers of innovation. Africa's youth population, the largest in the world, is a powerful driver of change. Investing in education, entrepreneurship, and digital skills development can equip young Africans to contribute meaningfully to their communities and the global economy. Initiatives such as Nigeria's U-Win program, which supports young entrepreneurs with funding and mentorship, highlight the potential for government-backed programs to foster innovation. Scaling similar initiatives across the continent can build a generation of leaders and innovators. Closing the gender gap. Women remain underrepresented in leadership and economic participation across Africa. Addressing gender disparities requires targeted policies, such as quotas for women in political and corporate leadership, access to capital for female entrepreneurs, and reforms that dismantle discriminatory practices. Rwanda's success in achieving gender parity in its parliament, with women holding over 60% of seats, demonstrates what is possible with deliberate policy efforts. Expanding these successes to other sectors can create a more inclusive and equitable society. Building Africa's technological sovereignty. Technological advancement is a cornerstone of Africa's transformation. However, achieving technological sovereignty requires reducing dependency on imported technologies and fostering homegrown innovation. Investing in research and development. Africa's current expenditure on research and development, R&D, is less than 1% of its GDP, far below the global average. Increasing investment in R&D is critical for driving innovation and addressing local challenges. Countries like South Africa, which has a robust R&D ecosystem, can lead regional collaborations to pool resources and share knowledge. Establishing centers of excellence in key fields such as agriculture, health, and renewable energy can position Africa as a hub for global innovation. Promoting digital inclusion. Digital technology has the potential to bridge gaps in education, healthcare, and governance. However, the digital divide remains a significant challenge, particularly in rural areas. Expanding access to affordable internet, providing digital literacy training, and developing localized content can ensure that no one is left behind in Africa's digital transformation. Redefining Africa's role in global governance. As the global order becomes increasingly multipolar, Africa has a unique opportunity to advocate for a more inclusive and equitable system of governance. This requires both reforming existing institutions and creating new platforms for collaboration. Pushing for institutional reform. The United Nations, World Bank, and International Monetary Fund have long faced criticism for underrepresenting Africa. By forming coalitions with other emerging economies, African nations can push for reforms that reflect the realities of the 21st century. For instance, increasing Africa's voting power in the IMF and securing permanent seats on the UN Security Council are critical steps toward achieving equity. The G20's recent inclusion of the African Union as a permanent member is a positive step, but sustained advocacy is needed to ensure meaningful representation across all global institutions. Creating African-led global platforms. In addition to seeking reforms, Africa must establish its own global platforms to amplify its voice and influence. Forums such as the Africa Investment Forum and the African Diaspora Summit provide opportunities to showcase Africa's potential and strengthen partnerships. Expanding these platforms and ensuring they address global challenges, such as climate change and health crises, can position Africa as a leader in driving multilateral solutions. Fostering resilient societies. A resilient Africa is one that can withstand shocks, adapt to change, and thrive in the face of uncertainty. Building resilience requires addressing social, economic, and environmental vulnerabilities through innovative and inclusive strategies. Strengthening social safety nets. Social protection programs such as cash transfers and healthcare subsidies can shield vulnerable populations from economic shocks. Countries like Kenya, which has implemented universal health coverage pilots, provide a model for expanding safety nets to reach the most marginalized. Promoting sustainable urbanization. Africa's rapid urbanization presents both challenges and opportunities. By investing in smart cities and sustainable infrastructure, governments can create urban environments that are inclusive, efficient, and environmentally friendly. Cities like Kigali, which has embraced green urban planning, demonstrate the potential for African metropolises to lead in sustainable development. Replicating these successes across the continent can enhance the quality of life for millions. Africa's global renaissance. Africa's journey toward becoming a global leader is a story of resilience, innovation, and ambition. By addressing its challenges with bold reforms and strategic partnerships, the continent can transform itself into a hub of prosperity and influence. The road ahead requires visionary leadership, unity among nations, and a commitment to inclusive growth. As Africa rises, it will not only shape its own destiny, but also contribute to a more just and equitable global order. Charting Africa's path to leadership and prosperity. Africa's rise as a global leader is not a distant dream, but a tangible possibility. With its vast resources, youthful population, and cultural richness, the continent holds immense potential to influence the 21st century global order. However, this potential can only be realized through bold decisions, strategic foresight, and a commitment to inclusive growth. Final recommendations for African leaders. To actualize Africa's aspirations for global leadership and sustainable development, African leaders must focus on the following strategic actions. 1. Strengthen regional unity and integration. Accelerate the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, to foster economic interdependence, and build a robust intra-African trade network. O. Enhance the capacity of the African Union, AU, and regional economic communities, RECs, to address conflicts, promote democratic governance, and implement regional development agendas. 2. Invest in human capital development or prioritize education and technical training, particularly in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM, to prepare the continent's youth for leadership and innovation. O. Expand access to healthcare and ensure that public health systems are resilient to crises such as pandemics and climate-related disasters. 3. Promote economic diversification and value addition. O. Focus on industrialization to reduce dependency on raw material exports and create sustainable jobs. O. Encourage innovation in agriculture, technology, and renewable energy to drive economic transformation while addressing environmental challenges. 4. Enhance governance and accountability. O. Strengthen democratic institutions, promote transparency, and combat corruption to build trust between governments and citizens. O. Empower judicial systems and civil society to ensure checks and balances that uphold the rule of law. 5. Leverage global partnerships. Strategically, O. Engage with emerging economies, traditional partners, and multilateral institutions to secure investments and technical expertise, ensuring that partnerships align with Africa's long-term goals. O. Advocate for Africa's representation in global governance structures, such as the UN Security Council and international financial institutions, to amplify the continent's voice. 6. Champion climate resilience and sustainability. O. Lead in renewable energy initiatives and climate adaptation programs to mitigate the impacts of climate change. O. Advocate for climate justice on global platforms, ensuring that developed nations fulfill their commitments to climate financing. 7. Foster cultural diplomacy and diaspora. Engagement or promote Africa's cultural and creative industries as tools for global influence and economic growth. O. Mobilize the African diaspora to contribute to national development through investments, skills transfer, and advocacy. Key messages and takeaways. Unity is strength. Africa's success depends on the ability of its nations to work together toward shared goals. Regional integration through AFCFTA and the AU can create a powerful collective voice on the global stage. Invest in people. The continent's youthful population is its greatest asset. By prioritizing education, healthcare, and entrepreneurship, African leaders can unlock the full potential of their citizens. Sustainability and innovation are key. Addressing climate change, promoting green energy, and fostering technological innovation will ensure long-term resilience and growth. Leadership matters. Visionary and accountable leadership is essential to overcome governance challenges, reduce corruption, and inspire confidence among citizens and global partners. Global advocacy is vital. Africa must demand equitable representation in global governance and advocate for policies that reflect its developmental priorities. A call to action for Africa's leaders. African leaders stand at a pivotal moment in history. The choices made today will determine the trajectory of the continent for generations to come. By embracing unity, fostering innovation, and committing to inclusive governance, they can transform Africa into a beacon of prosperity and a leader in global affairs. As Africa rises, its leaders must remember that their mandate is not just to govern but to inspire, mobilizing the collective will of over 1 billion Africans to achieve a shared vision of a better future. The continent's strength lies in its diversity, resilience, and ambition. By working together, African nations can chart a path that benefits not only Africa, but the world at large. The journey ahead is challenging, but filled with immense opportunities. With bold leadership and strategic action, Africa's global renaissance is not just possible, it is inevitable. Thank you for watching The Bold African Voice, BAV. If you enjoyed this analysis and want to stay informed about how global events shape Africa, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Hit the notification bell to never miss an update. Together, let's amplify Africa's voice on the world stage. See you in the next video.